Hey, everybody. It's so good to be here. I wish I was seeing you in person in New York, but this is where we are in life. So, next best thing, right? I want to introduce somebody first before we get started. This is my friend Cambry, and I'm hoping so much that that you can see both of us. We're kind of figuring this out as we go. But Cambry is a long time, lifelong, forever friend. And she's also been with me through the start of this business over the last couple years. And so she's here to kind of ask some questions um, and help walk us through this. What I want to do, my goal here is to show you some of the pieces that I have um, with Field and Supply right now that are available and kind of talk to you about the mediums I use and because there's a lot of them walk you through all of that and then show you some of the pieces and also show you my process. And so that is one advantage and one really cool blessing that I guess we can look at from this situation we're in with COVID is I can show you how I do these things. And some of my stuff is super cool and it's unique and I'll get to show you that process. So we'll get started. But just wanted you to know who was on the other side of this camera and who's going to be asking questions. And so actually one thing, just to remind you, you can submit questions throughout I've got 30 minutes here. So if there's anything, just holler it out. We'll read them and do our best to answer. So don't hesitate to jump in. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. This is my home studio. I have a gallery as well here in Greensboro, and I share that space with a dear friend of mine, Kara Cox. Kara Cox Interiors. She is phenomenal, and she has half of the space, and I have half of the space. For her, it's an office and a workspace. For me, it's just a place where I show my work. I do the messy and most of the work here in my home studio. So that's what you're going to be getting a tour of today. So the first thing I want to start with is this really big piece that I have available with Field and Supply right now, and kind of talk you through the process of that. It's unique, and we'll get started there. Okay? Yeah. Yep. Tap on that.
Oh, it's tapping.
There we go. Okay. All right. So the really cool thing about this I have to tell you is this is my sweet spot. Probably of all the different things I do, abstracts are what I really love the most. And this is so fun because I started on just a rolled out canvas. It's huge. I worked on it outside and also in my garage, and we just rolled it out from one side to the other. And I started just splattering with color. I had a little bit of an idea of where I was going, but not a lot of direction. Cambry, also, just if you just say, "Hey, Amy," I'm going to interrupt you if there's a question that comes through. Yeah. But specifically, what makes this piece so unique and so cool is that there is a lot of plaster in it, and I love working with texture. Um, in fact, almost all of my pieces, with the exception of any of my gouache or watercolor or charcoal pieces, have some sort of texture. You have a question?
And Erin wants to know, when you get started, do you know what it's going to look like, or does it just happen and through the process?
So I have a palette in mind, and that usually holds true. Okay. So I'll start with a certain group of colors, and that inspiration can come. I am a Pinterest junkie, and the things that inspire me on Pinterest are color, and it can come from anything, literally anything. Sometimes it's old artwork, sometimes it's just clothing, it's anything like that. So I'll start with kind of that general idea, and then it will usually stick and hold true to form, but not always. So I'll block in just I always start with my darkest of my dark. I try to start with the darkest of the dark. Usually they're not dark enough. And then I just start layering and layering and layering. And as I find a combination of color that works, that kind of moves me to the next stage. Like if I really like, as soon as I added in a little bit of this metallic, this is actually a product called Set Coat. I'm going to talk about my products in a minute, but once I added that in against this chartreuse kind of green color, I loved it. And so I knew that that was going to that was going to happen in other places. I also knew that I liked it thick. So that is also time consuming, and I have to wait a long time. Sometimes these pieces are in my garage, much to my husband's dismay, for weeks as they're drying. But the plaster does help speed up the time of that drying a little bit, and I mix in plasters and oil and raw pigments and all kinds of really fun stuff. So in this piece is titled "Yes, I Will," and that was actually an inspiration from a song. But yeah, so it just kind of a little bit of everything inspires the work. But this one turned out, this is one of my faves. I would like to have this in my house. And maybe I should say that I don't often say that about my work, but this one was sweet and special. And
how long does it normally take to do this?
So this one probably took, okay, so the time, this was about 3 months, but that does not mean that I was working every day for 3 months. That means that I probably worked a day and then waited 3 days before I would go back to it. So in the meantime, I'm doing other things, and they might be very different, but this thing is still stretched out and, in wherever I'm working on it, if it's the garage or something this big, I'm a little bit limited. Sometimes I'll move everything in my studio, and you'll kind of see as we walk around, to make room, and it gets chaotic and disastrous. And people that are neat freaks come in here and hyperventilate. But for me, that's kind of how I work and how I roll. So let me show you. Any more questions on this so far? Okay, so let me show you some of the products that I add in, and kind of where that started and came from. Okay, so I use a product. I'm looking for, let me try this one. Well, should have pulled these out. So as you can see, I have a lot of these things. But F+S is actually, it's a professional line of, look how yummy this is. A professional line of, oh, is it, can you move the other way? There it is. Really cool, kind of a metallic-y plaster. And it was originally created, and really what most people use it for are decorative finishes, wall finishes. And that is where I started maybe 15 years ago, no, 20 years ago. We're having camera difficulty. Here we go. 15 or 20 years ago is what I started doing before I was even working on canvas or anything, was working on walls. So that was like a back knowledge that I had. And then as I started moving in the direction of canvas work, I thought, I can really incorporate all of this well. So I mix my oils with that, or crushed pigment, and I'll show you some of that, although you're supposed to have on a mask if you ever use any of this, but just for the sake of.
And Beth wants to know if you experiment with this before, or is this something when you apply it to the canvas, you just see what it does?
Okay, so for me, my work is an experimentation, kind of from start to finish. I've been really trained. Learning how to use all of these products, I was probably in training with that for about 3 years. So I came with a lot of knowledge, but I always used a trowel, and I still do. There's lots of troweling with this piece, but I don't always know how I think I know, usually I know how it's gonna react on the canvas, but sometimes it's experimenting, but that's art. I mean, for me, that's how I create. So I'm mixing all kinds of stuff in with this plaster. It's pigments and oils. I mean, there's almost nothing that I don't mix. Yeah, sure. Okay. So, so we kind of keep rolling. As you can see, this would be an example of me working on with a medium that is very different than plaster, but it ebb and flows for me. I go back and forth between working really large and with a lot of texture, and then I kind of need a bit of a reprieve from that, and I'll go to something simpler and a little bit different. So a lot of charcoal sketches, and I kind of do that in different ways. Sometimes this is charcoal and gouache. Sometimes I do that. This has got some oil in it as well as charcoal. This is actually the same This is the same pose and position, just presented really different. So I think I did all of that within a week's time, just playing with it and seeing what I like. They have very different, you know, they're very different, but I kind of work all that together. And then this would be just charcoal. And actually, this was a series that I did. There were, I think I have a lot of artwork, and half the time I come across it and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about this, like stacked piled somewhere. This was a series of 6. And she's lovely and beautiful, and a little bit of different colors in every one. And then sometimes they're more simple, like this piece. And I would say this is a more of an example of what we have up on the website with Field and Supply. So if you scroll, I think on the same screen that you're looking at with this live video, if you scroll through that, you can get to I don't know how it's listed, maybe charcoal and watercolor and charcoal, but they're all the different ones that I have are listed. In fact, you want to walk over to that area and look at some of those, Cambry?
Right, and while we're doing that, Stacy wants to know how do you finish the charcoals? Is there coating?
Oh, for sure. So there's a fixative that I spray, and I don't know if I have it up here to show you, but yes, it is. They are sealed. So when I'm working with them, sometimes I have to seal midway if I'm going to add a lot of watercolor, because obviously as soon as you start adding another medium over the charcoal, you'll mess up the charcoal. So sometimes I will spray in between and then start adding the next medium of what I want to use. And it is a spray fixative. And if I can, actually, Cambry, this is a good time to maybe get a shot of the just a little bit of, this is a very neat version of all of my stuff. And I'm scanning, looking for the fixative spray, and I'm not seeing it. So it could be that it's downstairs. And then Cambry, keep coming this way, because we'll look real quick at the products that I like. I use a water mixable oil by Lucas. It is my absolute favorite. But there are a couple other oils that I use. But yeah, I just keep all of my stuff. Look at all this oil, and it's supposed to be organized by color, and that just holds true for all of, I don't know.
So that brings me back to Brad's question. How do you determine what colors when you're thinking about creating something new? Like, let me get you back on there. Like, is that part of your process? Or?
The colors, for sure. I usually work in groups. It's almost like a mood thing. It's what I'm kind of feeling, where I'm just where I am in life at that moment, and then it usually sticks for a while. I have a couple different galleries that carry my work. G Grace Gallery in Nashville, other than my own with Kara Cox and my gallery here in Greensboro, which is where I live, Greensboro, North Carolina. In Nashville, they carry my work, and she has a lot, because her clients they like a lighter palette, and that's typically what she uses. So that's the color scheme that she has. Some of my deeper, more jewel tone, richer colors that I personally really love, but they aren't always as popular. I think people kind of like the lighter usually, or at least that's been my experience. Grandover Resort here in Greensboro has a gallery, a beautiful gallery, and they have a lot of those kind of deeper, more dramatic, richer colors, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's just a little bit of just kind of life and mood and where I am. And usually once I start, it goes for a little while like this. But this is kind of my, these are my colors. This is what I like this. If it's not black and white, I usually am in this color family. Yeah, well, actually, let's look at, I want to make sure I highlight these because these are super cool. This is something that I created specifically for Field and Supply, and it just kind of evolved. I love Matisse. I love his cutouts. And can you get that at all? And these colors, I don't know what happened. It just happened. It just started. And before I knew it, I had created 50 of these. They are all in individually cut, and they're all the same but very different. So as you can imagine, if you're cutting all of those pieces and assembling it, each one is going to be a little bit different. So they are all different colors. Cambry, can you get maybe over? Okay.
I have a question from Jason too. Does
Yeah.
the constant changing of mediums help you see things in other pieces you may have stepped away from for a while?
It absolutely does. And I don't know if this is the question he's asking, but it is, it's almost a burden because I want to go back and redo constantly. And you can't do that. And I think it's unfair to the piece. It kind of represents where the artist was at the time. And to keep changing is, I don't know, I almost feel guilty covering things up at times. But that is one benefit for me to have the separate gallery space outside of where I'm working, is I kind of feel like that's a safe zone, and that once it's there, I can't touch it again. Once it's hanging on the wall there, it's done. Yeah, so that is, but that's a great question. So anyways, just real quick, because I want to keep moving. I don't know how we're doing on time, Cambry, but there are 12 what? Oh, okay. But there are a lot of color combinations, and you can see that each are just slightly different because as I was working, the hand cuts differently every time. And this is an example of how I had framed these. But yes, there are 50 of these. These were created and released specifically for Field and Supply. So yeah, that would be a fun addition to for lots of people because they're so diverse. And the title is the same for all of them. It's Perseverance, which I think holds true for our time and women in general. There's a bit of a story behind all these, but yeah, they're all labeled 1 through 50. So there's 50 of those. Should we keep moving? Keep moving?
Keep moving.
Okay. So these pieces I have a couple of male figures that I really like them. And they are all available. So there's one. So check that one out. Here are, as we keep kind of checking these out over here, here are some of the watercolor and charcoal and gouache pieces. This is one of my favorites. This piece is titled Transfigured, and I love it because there's a bit of movement in the face, and the form and the body is subtle but really beautiful. So that's fun. That's up on the Field and Supply site as well. And then I don't know the question.
Yeah, I do have a question back to these.
Woo.
Can we see more of the colorways for the cutouts? And actually, what is the medium for these?
Okay, so these are, this is gouache. All of it's paper, different layers of, okay. Woo. I'm trying to think where I've got, there's just so many.
Just about every color.
They are all by color. They're all posted on the Field and Supply site. So it's all paper and wax. I use an aqua wax to seal, and it's a high gloss, so there's a sheen to it, but it's paper upon paper, and it's just gouache and water on paper, and then that's applied to a thicker canvas type paper. There's just so many, all are different, but yes, we photographed all of them for the site, so you can definitely check out that wide range. Okay. Okay. So we've kind of looked at these. All right. This is another, these are up on the site as well. These are some fun abstracts. We have a question. Oh, okay. Can you see? Okay. These will probably ultimately be inspiration for me for larger pieces, because that's really how I like to work. But it was super fun. Yeah. It was really fun to create these small, because I really generally don't do that. And then these darker blue were fun too. So I will probably use these color combinations. Maybe you could almost consider these as a practice of sorts, even though they're not, they're their own individual pieces. But for me, as I was forced to create, that's probably my favorite. As I was forced to minimize my size, it kind of stretched me as an artist, because I don't typically do that. So all of those are up.
You want to show us
Yeah.
a little bit of the demo?
Okay. So, yeah. So let's move over here because this is the fun stuff. 10 minutes. Okay. That's actually perfect because we're going to end with my encaustic stuff that is really hard to ever explain to people. Some of these pieces, actually, some of this has a little bit of encaustic in it. This is not. This is the very beginnings of an abstract piece I'm working on. But that would be a good example. Let me squeeze past you of kind of how I start with color and what I like. And sometimes it's just one they are just to what is working for me. But yeah, I do it kind of old school way. Like I start with that color palette with my wheel, with my color wheel. Okay, but over here, this is the part that a lot of people have not seen. Cambry, I think maybe the best way is almost for you to kind of look overhead a little bit so that you can see a lot of my work is what's called encaustics, and it is melted pigments and beeswax. Been around forever and ever, like thousands of years. And the reason I do not have any of these on the Field and Supply website, the reason is I can't ship anything in the summer because it's wax, obviously. So it just would not be right to have. There's about 2 or 3 months a year where I just can't ship any of these pieces. So I'm working on them, and I want you to see the process because it's such a big part of my work. But it's just not something I could make available for shipping right now. Okay, but this is a very basic palette, and as you can see, Cambry over here, I have a lot more colors, and this is messy, but it starts with melting wax. And again, I use an RNF pigments, and they can be mixed, and there's delicious colors. It's super fun. Oil goes really well, oil paint, and these pigments as well. This is a rigged up HVAC system that is my exhaust that I would typically have running, but it's too loud, so I'm not going to have that on right now. But typically I would have that running. I'm going to pull my hair back because I want to show you what this looks like in action. And I don't want to catch my hair on fire. So that might be ridiculous, but let's roll with it. Okay, so I have started this board. I always work on some sort of a cradled board, as you can imagine, because I'm getting ready to hit it with fire. I can't use paper, or sometimes I do, but I have to be really careful. So I've got a cradled board here. I have put a layer of wax already, and there's lots of different ways to heat and melt your encaustics, but for me, my favorite is the blade torch. And it is fast, and it's kind of has an instant gratification thing to it. But maybe Cambry, if you could come over. Whew. Okay, so what I'm looking for in this, I hope you can still hear me over the noise. For me, I am looking to really get this surface almost to its molten state. That is not necessary in order for it to be sealed. What you are trying to do, encaustics means literally to burn in. So you are burning the wax into the surface. All that is needed is to hit it with a little bit of heat, just a kiss of heat, until you see a little bit of a sheen. For me, I always like to work with a really smooth surface. So I'm not going to do anything other than hit it with a really high heat. But let me show you what happens when we add a little bit of, I'm just going to add some white just for effect. Can you see that, Cambry? Okay. Yeah, as long as you can see the work is good. Okay, so I've added a little bit of white, and it's not adhered. It's not, I mean, it's okay, but it's not burned in where it will be solidified like for life, forever, for generations to come until you hit it with heat. So as I hit it with heat, you start to get this really cool. And Cambry, how close can you get where you can really see it? Can you see where the colors start kind of blending together? And that creates a cool effect depending on what you're after. The white on blue is a little subtle, so let me let that kind of breathe for just a second, and I'm gonna
do that. Can
yeah.
we highlight? Stacy wants to see the detail on the big round one in your shop below. That one. Okay, maybe not. Don't get too distracted.
Okay. The big round one.
We'll come back to that.
Okay. Stacy, let me know exactly what you're which one you're referring to if you're still there. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of black to this just so you can see kind of the effect, and maybe actually also add in some blue too. And let's see what happens when we mix. So that's super awesome because I'm kind of hitting this with too much heat. I wouldn't typically do this, but for the effect of you being able to see what happens with the color as they kind of spread. And then within a matter of, I don't know, seconds, sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes a minute, it will be solidified and you can work on your next layer. Lots of tools are involved in this. And as you can see over here, Cambria, all of these, no, you're good. And if it's supposed to be in a kitchen or supposed to be in a shop, it's going to be in my studio. And that's a problem for, I don't cook, so it works out great for me, but it's a problem for anybody in my house that's ever trying to cook because they can't find tools. They can't find what they need. Was it this piece? Okay, so this actually is I had these pulled out because I wanted to show you kind of how I want to show you how this has been laying flat and it's a mess. How I'm always looking to frame stuff in a unique and cool way. I get my leather out of this really cool tannery in New York. I stretch it myself and then I just start playing with it. And this piece I added, this is obviously a round wooden board. And I just attached it to the leather. I framed it. And this is all just part of me experimenting with ways to incorporate different materials and layers. And yeah, super love that. This is another one. We're going to start wrapping up here, but this is, I have a Crown of Thorns series that I love, and I have many, many, many of them in different colors, and that is fun. This is a wire that is melted into the surface, and then just do some fun stuff with that. Again, always trying to come up with different ways of framing, and a lot of gold leaf. I love details, even the details that no one sees. I will usually include those. So this is just paper mixed in with the wax. Here's another one. I love framing anything in lucite. I just think that it gives a modern, kind of cool, fresh look. There's so much more I wish I could show you. Fun pieces of mixing encaustics with resin. That's another medium I kind of started playing with. So yeah, I'm a bit all over the place.
Well, real quick, can you show us what a finished one looks like you did the demo? But
okay.
I want to see a finished encaustic piece.
Okay. Do I have?
And Patricia wants to know your favorite piece you've worked on.
So in the studio, my favorite piece is that large piece over there. This huge board is not finished, but if you go to my website, which is just my name, amyheywood.com, you can see some finished encaustics. And the gallery here in Greensboro, Grand Over Gallery, has several of my finished pieces. And well, it's almost finished. I still have some stuff to do, but this is probably the closest that I'm getting. Also, we're about done.
Talking about finishes. You're finished. Your time is up.
Do we have like 20 seconds? Is Chad saying yes, no? Okay. So I do a couple of these pieces are going to be there in the Southern Living House, the show home in their October issue, I believe. Some of these encaustic pieces. So you'll get to see finished ones there. Okay. I think we're done. Thank you guys for being here, and check out, there are so many awesome, awesome vendors. I've been scrolling, like I couldn't sleep last night. I was scrolling through all of them. So check that out and keep watching these live feeds because this is fun to see how the artists work. All right, I think we're done. You guys have a, I think we're done.